Hello and welcome everyone to the CASA live advocacy update podcast, live stream, whatever you want to call this. Welcome everyone. Hello, Alex. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Kristen, hello, welcome. How are you guys doing today? Last time I asked you both this at the same time, though, it went terribly wrong. So ladies first, I'm going to ask Kristen, how are you doing today?
I pulled all my hair out. No, actually, it's busy with World Vape Day and just everything else that's been going on. A lot of exciting stuff that you guys will be talking about that happened this week as far as research and E-cigarette summit and just so much stuff going on. So it's been a little crazy, but keeping me busy, that's for sure.
That's awesome. Admittedly, full disclaimer, I'm way behind this week. So I am going to be basically joining some of our audience in listening to you break down a lot of this. It's just been a really chaotic, crazy, busy week for me. So I'm a little behind. So I'm going to rely on Kristen as well to break down a lot of that stuff. Alex, how are you today?
Just as a matter of good practice, I'm getting confused about a piece of legislation before we go live. So
yes,
where I'm at.
We love to stymie Alex.
Yeah, well, you are much better at. I get like halfway through a bill, and I'm usually lost, and I'm like, Jim, somebody help me. But that's good. I'm glad that you guys are both doing well. I'm all right. I'm tired. But other than that, I'm doing well. It's like I said, it's just been like a busy, crazy week here at home and work and stuff like that. But we're making it through it. We're getting through it. Otherwise, I hope that we sound good. I hope that everybody can see us and that we sound good. We've been live now for a few minutes, and normally we get a little feedback from chat or whatever, but
we didn't ask.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I guess I didn't really ask. But yeah, I hope that everybody can hear us and see us, and I hope that everybody out there is doing well as well. Top of the hour, though. First thing right out of the gate, as we always do here, legislative rundown. This is where we give the floor to Alex to break it down for us. What is going on this week? What is new? What are updates? What do people need to be watching out for right now?
Well, let's go navigate the website and just take it from the top. Kansas City, Missouri, the flavor ban ordinance that was being proposed there ended up getting tabled in December.
Sorry.
And it has just been sort of kept on the calendar ever since. And like every month it comes back up and it's just leave it on the calendar. But there seems to be some renewed interest in bringing this back to life. And so things kick off this week with a work session, which is not typically something that the public is invited to chime in on. And that is Wednesday, June 2nd. And then next week, or the following week, is a committee meeting. I don't know if there's a hearing involved in this. Certainly there was a lot of participation the first time around. And that's what ended up getting this sort of tabled. But I don't have any information as to what is motivating these folks to bring this back. Hopefully, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, considering some of the research that has just come out in the past week, they are going to be just killing this for good. That would be, to me, the logical conclusion.
Yeah, that would be ideal. Yeah,
but that is not what we're expecting at the moment. So if you do live in Kansas City, Missouri, please find your way to our call to action and fill out all the little stuff on the form here and send your message to your members of the city council. I believe I also have this. I might have taken it off. Anyway, this is going to go. This is going to go to people that need to hear it.
Just because we're hopeful that this is just going to die doesn't mean to not get involved or not write, not email, not do any of this. Definitely still keep the pressure on.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, reaching out to your members of the city council, it even though it's outside of a hearing, it's always good. It's just like your lawmaker at the state level. They do need to hear from their constituents. And so I'm sure there's plenty of people in Kansas City who have switched to vaping from smoking and share that with your city council member. The other thing that needs some attention is going to be the flavor ban in Maine. I don't have any additional updates since we updated this last week. It came out of committee with a divided report, and then I believe it's crossing over to the other house. This is a thing. This could happen. Maine could see a flavor ban. So it's really important. If you do live in Maine, please send your messages to lawmakers urging them to oppose this bill. It is in the House of Representatives at the moment, or it could be moving to a vote by the full House of Representatives, which would then cross over to the Senate.
Right.
So LD 1550. We've been talking about this, I think, for the past 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah. We've definitely talked about Maine the past couple of weeks, but Maine. Come on, it's time.
Yeah, definitely just want to keep it on folks' radar because this could pass. Yeah. The last thing, and this was the bit of legislation I was getting all confused about just in time to go on the air, the Oregon online sales ban. I'm confused. I've been reading over the bill. This is the bill, HB 2261, and they do spell it out here in Section 3, which I have highlighted and way too small for anyone to read. But they're really just, if you look at it, the dark lettering here, that is the amendment to the existing law, including inhalant delivery systems, the worst name for vapor products in any code anywhere.
Make sure that you don't ship Nicotrol inhalers.
No, you're fine. There's usually an exemption for anything that's a
fire product.
Yeah. So this is that. It just limits it. You retailer may not sell cigarettes, inhalant delivery systems, et cetera, except as part of a face-to-face sale. But then they go on to kind of spell out like all of the things that you would need in order to verify someone's age before completing a delivery sale. I'm still confused, and we had this
deliver. Then why have a rule about delivering? Yeah, it makes no sense.
Yeah, I'm not really clear. I mean, what we know in some places, what the law describes as a delivery sale is. The shop has a driver that would take it around, just like your pharmacy can deliver medications. And so I know, I mean, in a lot of jurisdictions, that is an option. And I'm not really clear on whether or not this takes that option away completely, or if it's just limited to, as they define, delivery, something as a service that delivers letters. So
that's kind of like what I had asked you before we went live, whether, like locally in Oregon, would they be able to say like somebody could call the shop as opposed to being like an online sale, no sales over the internet, call the shop, pay over the phone. And then if that shop was offering like a delivery of some kind where an employee or somebody from that shop, it's not going through a courier, would they be able to do that? Like, I know that some shops locally, like around, in different parts of the country or whatever, do some kind of like home local delivery for just, customers just in their area. But I don't know if that would even be allowed under this.
Yeah, I'm not entirely clear. I do know everybody is, as you all have mentioned, everybody is reporting this as an online sales ban. And it does cover, as simply making a phone call is considered. I mean, you can cover all of this under the umbrella of remote sales.
Right.
So even making a phone call
doesn't specify internet. That's part of the problem.
Not just internet. So internet's included. So it's a phone, or
it does say like remote sales.
Calling an online sales ban's kind of a misnomer by the headlines.
Right. Yeah, it's not just the internet. It's all the other ways that you might communicate with a shop and say, give me that vape sauce.
Right.
So we're still within, very much so, in a pandemic. People are still very cautious about, face-to-face, going out shopping, things like this. And so now, given that, we're going to say, no, the only way that you can go, as Alex so eloquently put it, go get your vape sauce is to go in person. We're forcing people to interact face-to-face at that point.
I don't know if it's worse than juice.
Yeah, I said, just sideline really quick. I used to say juice. I stopped doing it years ago, and I just call it liquid now. Just a personal preference or whatever. But yeah, to me, it's just one of those. It's just one of those things where you're like, really, like we're still in a pandemic. It's still happening. There are still people who are very, very cautious about going out. There are people who only do, curbside pickups. They do the Instacart. They do all that kind of stuff to avoid face-to-face, person-to-person interactions. And Oregon is basically taking the approach of, no, we're going to force you to do that.
Yeah, as we will get further along in the conversation today, I think we'll get to the point here, which is that there's not a whole lot of actual logic, I think, behind it. There is some logic, but it's faulty logic behind all of these efforts to take away access to these products. So, and that's certainly the one, we didn't spend enough time talking before we came on. I found something off the script that just came out recently. And it would be good to add to this conversation. So we can come back to that, or I can skip right into the stuff that you guys weren't prepared for.
I'm gonna you make the call. You call the audible today.
Do you have a note sheet, Alex, that I can?
I don't. I didn't do notes. But
I'll just hunt the links down if I have to.
Alex works really hard most weeks.
I'm not cruel.
Alex works really hard most weeks at putting together show notes for us, and I typically read them about 2 to 3 hours prior to the show.
I know where this one is. I saw that come up earlier.
Yeah. So this is a good one, and I just want to bring it up because this is Clive Bates's and other people's response to this really dumb post that the World Health Organization put up last week. This is it here. World No Tobacco Day, blah, blah, blah. If you want to be a winner, you got to quit smoking. Of course, the implication there being that if you continue to smoke or generally use nicotine, you're a loser, which I've found is really just the best way to make friends. Yeah. But the one thing I did really want to point out here in the WHO's statement is in this first paragraph that I have highlighted, and again, too small for people to read. But I want people to note just how out of the way they go to make sure that that you're an object, you are a smoker. And that is, when the news came out that smokers were more likely to develop severe disease with COVID-19 compared to non-smokers, it triggered millions of smokers to want to quit tobacco. It triggered millions of people to try to quit smoking. The WHO, of course, is not capable of making that distinction between or acknowledging that smokers are people. And so all of this is just laced with that sort of othering language, I'm sure. And of course, the bit of the misinformation there about smoke. We know that people with pre-existing conditions, heart disease, obesity, diabetes, lung issues, your outcomes are likely to be worse if you end up in the hospital with COVID-19, but you've got to get there first. And there's a lot of research going into whether or not nicotine was actually staving off the worst, that cytokine storm that your immune system is overreacting to the virus, and that's what's killing people. And so this is something that's still being researched. And I know that the World Health Organization, all these people love to kind of latch on to these sensational headlines and say, hey, look, if we just make a big noise about this, all kinds of people are going to be scared away from tobacco. When in reality, what people should have been told is, take care of yourself, switch to a safer product to start with, and you may be able to avoid the worst of this. And still, even with me saying that, I mean, I think it's a little bit more clear now that we're talking about nicotine and not smoke. But is anybody really in a position to say like switch to a nicotine product, a smoke-free nicotine product, and you maybe get the same protection from COVID-19? The research into that is ongoing. I know that they were talking about the nicotine patches and the research
in France, I believe.
Yeah,
they're doing a lot of research right now as far as using nicotine patches and things like that, because my understanding is like the SARS-CoV-2 virus and nicotine both act on the same receptors and things like this. So nicotine may be acting as some like a deterrent or like a protective component against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So that's kind of like my weak understanding of how that functions. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of research globally, like not just here. Like there's a lot of research going on with that around the world right now.
Yeah, so but the World Health Organization, like anybody else, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Right.
So this is Clive Bates's response in coordination with a lot of other experts in the field, and recommend everybody check this out. We got
in the chat.
What's that?
The link is in the chat.
Awesome. And so yeah, I'm not going to read this to everybody here. But the number one point here at the top, the World Health Organization has the wrong analysis of the problem. The focus must be on smoking. And that's the theme going forward, at least for this weekend and for a lot of us anyway. This is all about smoking. So
if I could just interject on that one. I think even a lot of vapors and THR advocates probably don't even understand or notice the subtle passive aggressiveness of saying quitters are winners, because they'll turn around and say, well, we never called smokers losers. We never called vapors losers. What do you mean? We never said that, just completely denying the implication of saying, well, if you're not a quitter, that means you're not a winner. So what does that mean you are? And I think people don't understand how that is, that kind of language, like you pointed out earlier about saying smoker and never mentioning that any of these things, like you said, these smoker things are people. They're people. These are lives. And they only care about the lives when that's the thing that gets me, is when they're talking about COVID. Oh, we need to save their lives. But any other time, quit or die. It's like,
it's absolutely like we're only going to acknowledge you as human beings when it fits our narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
And Alex pointed out, smoker is a word. I'm really keen on language, and I think a lot of people know that about me. I refer to people who use drugs as people who use drugs, not addicts or crackheads or things like this. Like, they're people first and foremost. I'm very big on using better language, non-stigmatizing language. But smoker was something that, out of all the language that I've adjusted myself to over the years, smoker was a really hard one, and I still catch myself saying it because I personally identified as smoker for a really, really long time. And so like, it's one of those things where even I'll catch myself saying, like, oh, smokers or what, instead of people who smoke. And it's just one of those like things I'm still actively trying to break too. But I think the using better language is something that we can all make like just an attempt to do, even if you correct yourself or something like that. I think it matters. And I think it matters to a lot of people out there, because we're not just defined by something that we do.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. And I've even thought about that with vapor, like the word vapor, like,
we do it all the time.
And I identify as a vapor, and I'm like, am I a vapor or am I a person who vapes? Like,
well,
it's not just my life. I'm a mother. I'm I'm an employee. I'm a wife. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. It's like to say I'm a smoker, and it's almost like it was created as a way to stigmatize, and I think a lot of people are like, well, it should be stigmatized. No, it shouldn't, because as soon as you stigmatize something, you dehumanize it. And people need to understand that you don't want to dehumanize these people, because then nobody cares if they live or die. And that's the whole point.
The vapor one is a little catch-22 for people too, though, because like you're proud of that, right? Like you're proud to be a vapor.
Yeah, it's different. It's different.
Yeah,
it really is. But that's the thing. I'm a coffee drinker.
This is,
Define me by my coffee.
It's one of those things where, you know, I've self-identified as a smoker. I have self-identified as a recovering alcoholic and addict. I've used that language. It took me a long time to figure out how to talk about my experience with using drugs and with recovery, because you know, it just came automatic, and that's fine. But smoker used to be our term. I mean, it still kind of is. It's still like vapor. I'm a smoker. That means I do the smoking. But it's the way that it's been twisted, and in a way, because of the people who are saying it,
right?
It becomes that othering language. And so, you know, it's kind of the only way for us to fight back is just to say, cool, we're not going to use the word anymore, because, you know, you've taken it over and turned it into part of your coercive strategy. And that's, you know. Now
I will add.
I'm sorry, real quick. It's really quick. It's usually said in the tone of voice of, "Oh, you're a smoker."
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I will add though.
I mean, none of us go, "I'm a smoker." You know, that's how they look at us, and that's what
I think. Even some of those terms, addict and things like that. If you self-identify using those terms, and you're not self-identifying in a demeaning way, if somehow using those terms helps you in your recovery, in your whatever that may be, in your quitting, I think that's acceptable. That's like a self thing, as long as, you know, somebody's not like dragging themselves through the mud and calling themselves, you know, an addict, or, you know, oh, I'm a dirty smoker or something like that, and they're demeaning themselves. If that language used for yourself is somehow beneficial, I can absolutely respect that. Do what helps you. You know you better than I know you or anybody else knows you. But I think when we talk about people in general, and we're talking, you know, publicly, specifically, or even privately with our friends or whatever like that, using better language can be contagious and is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
all right, cool. Moving right
along. I figure since this is the special weekend, and you've been working so hard on this, Kristen, would you like to take us into World Vape Day?
Yeah. So I've been helping them. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
Oh wait, let me. I gotta stop mine.
Who is them?
I don't know. Hold on, I'll get to that in a second.
The ominous them.
I'm helping them.
Oh, we're helping them now. Okay.
They must be a bunch of smokers.
I have like 5,000 windows open, but I'm trying to. I can pick which screen to share, right? Okay.
Ooh, I like Breeze Tones. You know, he said, I see in chat you guys are talking about the term coffee addict in the coffee industry, coffee user. Breeze Tone says an extreme enthusiast. I like that as opposed to coffee addict. I am a coffee enthusiast. I am also a coffee enthusiast, Adam, but not nearly to your level.
I am trying to figure out how to get to the right.
We can all hang out while Kristen figures out Twitter.
I went into here we go. I was just trying to get back to this Twitter. Hold on. But then I get into, where am I? Okay. So you guys seen the World Vape Day one?
Yep.
That's coming up. Why is nothing happening? So the problem is I've got it. Yeah.
Internet. You must have a case of Alex's internet right now.
My internet is fine. Leave me alone.
I think what I'm going to do. Does this work better? I've got like 5,000 windows open right now.
That might be
why everything's slow.
Yeah, that might be part of it.
Well, right, I found
you guys. Hold on. You go to your thing, and I'm going to try to close some of these windows so that.
Okay, let's try it on.
Well, for everybody who doesn't know yet, tomorrow, Sunday, is World Vape Day.
Okay.
I know that there are a number of like hashtags and things that are going around. Do we have like an official one hashtag that people really need to know? Because I see a lot of them out there.
Yeah, WVD for World Vape Day 21 for 2021.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
That was something that I was getting a little lost on, because in order to really like kind of optimize our efforts or get things trending, we really want people to kind of use the main hashtag. I mean, people can add hashtags into things and whatever, but if there's definitely one main one that people need to know, WVD21.
World Vape Day. You could also do World Vape Day. Some people are using that. That was the thing from last year. I think they decided to go with this shortened one just as a way to track participation. Why am I getting echo back?
It probably helps with character limits too. Much shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does help. Especially when you're trying to do 48 of them. Because we're gonna. Okay, so I've been helping. E-cig is an international consumer organization that is pretty much around to try to help all the worldwide different consumer organizations collectively have a greater voice. Kind of like what CASA does for individual consumers in the United States. We try to get all our voices together are stronger. So E-cig is CASA is a member of E-cig. They're not a regulatory, or they're not our boss, or they're not that. They're really just sort of a meeting point and a I don't know, what would you call it, Alex, when you to disseminate the information, to help everybody helps each other, communications and things like that. So
kind of helping people get on the same page and having
similar
messaging and with things like that.
Yeah, and then last year, World Vape Day has been going on since about 2012, and it's really been kind of it didn't always have the same day. There wasn't really anything organized about it. Usually people be like, "Oh, tomorrow's World Vape Day," and everybody's like, "Oh, what should we do?" And then it got to build a little bit more, but nobody was really kind of taking ownership of it. Not ownership as in we own it and you can't do it, but more ownership of we're going to try to be responsible for it. So more like responsibility for it. And E-cig kind of agreed last year. They're like, well, maybe we can do this since we do have all these worldwide members. So we really are world, so we're not just some Canadian or just some American or just some British organization that's co-opting the day. It's truly trying to be international. And so they developed the site last year and started developing a lot of memes and things like that. And then this year, I've been actually helping them out by keeping the World Vape Day Twitter and Facebook accounts active. There's a Facebook account too. I shouldn't say we, because we are all we. You can go to the Facebook one and get the little thing around your profile if you want. We want one of those little profile picture frames, and on the website itself you can see there's some videos. There should be a way to get to like example tweets, but if you keep an eye on the account, I'm sending out tweets every half hour, so there's going to be a bunch of different stuff coming out that you can retweet. Make sure if you do retweet that you actually put maybe do a quote retweet to put the hashtag back in there. We're really trying to get this trending this year so that we can get a lot of attention. But yeah, it's been great. Like Grim Green did a show on it. The guys over at Son of Liberty, the Smoke Free Radio. Shout
out to Pat and Kevin over there at Son of Liberty Radio.
Yeah, they're awesome. And then Brett Stafford. Am I saying his name right? Regulator Watch. He's I guess is doing a special show, and I think there's a couple others. There's one in India. The Indian Association is going to be doing one. It's 9:00 at night their time, so it's going to be in about. I get so confused. These time zones have been messing me up, you guys. Like 6 hours, maybe? No.
Oh, I'm the worst person.
They're in
worst.
India.
I end every show talking about how bad I am at time zones, so don't ask me.
We shared the link to their live thing on our, and that's them right there, actually, Alex. Avi.
From India?
Yeah, and they've got Charles is going to be on that, and some other people too. So if you feel like watching in India, so there's going to be stuff. So we started at 3:00 this after 3:30 this afternoon. You start seeing the tweets going out. They're going to go straight through 3:00 tomorrow afternoon, and then on Monday, the idea is to get everybody to keep tweeting, but co-opt the No World Tobacco Day or World No Tobacco Day, which is Monday. And they're basically saying, quit or die, because that's what that thing with the World Health Organization kind of put that message out about vaping and quitting and stuff just before World Vape Day. It seemed like a sort of a, well, if you haven't quit vaping, you're still smoking type of message out there. So you haven't really quit. So yeah, our theme this year is celebrating my safer choices, meaning that I'm celebrating the fact that I have safer choices, or I have access to safer choices, or that I'm celebrating the choices that I have. However you want to read that, but that's the kind of the theme this year that we were going on to have people sort of think about. So we'd love to have your stories. We'd love to have you go to share something on Twitter. Say, hey, I quit. I use this flavor. However you want to do it. Hashtag any issue that you think is important. So things about like taxes and flavors, the choices that you need, having access, not having online sales access, things like that. So that's the things you want to talk about. Tell your story. You're celebrating the success of something that's making you happy. And one of the things that we're also coming out with for CASAD tomorrow, we're going to be pulling testimonials from our testimonial library and taking blurbs from those. Danielle designed me a cute little background and everything, and I'm just going to be kind of copy and pasting with the name on there and putting those out so people can just see these stories that these things work, and these people, every day should be World Vape Day is kind of the way I say it. It's your day. And the other thing is I was saying, one of the memes that we're going to be sending out later is come out of the closet, basically come out as a vapor. A lot of us hide the fact. I know a lot of us hid the fact that we smoked. I know I did. I tried to hide it from work. I didn't want people to have the smell. I mean, I was a real estate agent, so of course I didn't want to, offend anybody. And so I hid it a lot. And I think part of our problem is that we're kind of still so used to being hidden and hiding what we do. And I'm just a bad nicotine user and being embarrassed by our nicotine use. Well, is anybody embarrassed by the fact that they drink caffeine, their Diet Coke or their coffee? No. So be proud of it. Don't be ashamed of it. You don't have to own up to anything. You use nicotine. So what? You're using something that's healthier for you that you enjoy. You're not doing something that's killing you or anybody around you. So that's worth celebrating and not being ashamed of. And if you come out, there's a lot of people who probably don't even realize. And if you look at Cliff Douglas, he changed his mind because he knew somebody who vaped and went back to smoking. So he understood how all of this anti-vaping stuff hurt people. And it wasn't until he knew somebody that it really clicked for him. So there's people who know you who probably think, oh, vaping's horrible, and they have no idea that you vape. So if you can kind of come out as a vapor and let these people know, we can make a lot more Cliff Douglases out there that hopefully will change their mind, because they're like, oh, I didn't know you vaped. Did it help? Yeah. What would you do if, they did this? Go back to smoking. And his niece did. Wasn't it his niece? I think it was.
Yeah, it was his niece. Yeah. It was his niece and I think her boyfriend.
Yeah.
So come out as a vapor. Tell people, don't be ashamed of it. Let them know what you do if you're an advocate. Obviously, vape shop owners are out there doing that, but hey, you guys should be really proud because you took a chance I would never have in a million years. You are the bravest people I know, among some of the bravest people. But as a vapor, don't be ashamed of it. We need to break this stigma. We need to make it something as normal as being a coffee drinker, or enjoying a glass of wine, or You know, I mean, if people can go jump off of cliffs with a parachute, why are we embarrassed that we use a relatively mild chemical? You know, it's silly, and try to get out of that mindset and be proud of, you know, I'm not a proud coffee drinker. That's silly, you know, so I'm not a proud vapor either, but I am proud of the fact that I'm not hurting myself anymore, and then I'm going to live longer for my daughter. And that rolled into a lot of other things that affected the things, how I felt about my health, losing weight and all that other kind of stuff. So that is something to be proud of, but don't hide it. Don't be like, oh, I'm just a nicotine user. You got to get that story out there so your neighbors understand, oh, I know somebody who vapes. Kind of like the way they raise awareness for people with certain diseases. You know, they do the same thing. Raise awareness that this person has, you know, I'm trying to say, it's spine disease. I can't even say it right now.
Spina bifida? You picked a really hard one to say.
Yes. I wanted to pick something so hard. Or suffers from depression or whatever, you know, or has, you know, a dependency on certain drugs or whatever. It's that stigma you have to get rid of before people care. You know, and if people don't ever know somebody who's been addicted to opioids, they think, oh, well, they're just weak. They're just bad people or whatever, until they know somebody, until it hits you. Same thing, like if you have suicide or something like that, or depression hits you, that makes it, you know, something that's personal. And that's why we have to do that with vaping. So come out today, come out and tell people, if you've never posted on any of your social media about the fact that vaping has helped you quit smoking, do it now. Yeah. And tell your friends to do it now, you know, spread that message.
And keep it up and do it tomorrow too, because
keep doing it.
Tomorrow in the United States is
tomorrow's the U.S. I'm sorry, you people. If anybody in New Zealand is watching, hi, good morning. And after that, I think we're hitting the Pacific, Asian Pacific. We've got the Philippines and Taiwan. And another one, and I'm totally blanking on it, and I feel bad not remembering who they are. And then we go to Thailand and then India, and then we start hitting all the African continent, and then that kind of starts to hit Asia or Europe too. So we're slowly working our way that way, and we'll be saying good morning to everybody, and we hope you'll come back and say good morning to us and give us a, I say us like it's us, but, you know, say good morning to the World Vaping account and Vape Day account, and share your story, come out as a vapor, and don't be ashamed of being a vapor.
Yeah, I take every opportunity. Like when we go out to, we live near Darien Lake. There's a Six Flags, there's a water park. We didn't go last year; they were closed down. But years prior, you know, they've smoking sections and things like this, and I'll take the opportunity to go vape, and if somebody asks me, I try to talk to them about it. But on that same topic of sharing your story and you know, kind of helping to break that stigma, I actually had a really good interaction this past week with a gentleman here in town. We do what they call the Day of Caring, and the company that I work for, we go and we volunteer some of our time and some materials to help out one of the Christian academies here in this town. And it's a great time, and a lot of people from the community also join in. There's usually a few parents or people from other businesses that, you know, maybe they want the day off and they want to go help mulch some flower beds and things like this. And it's usually, you know, it's a really nice day. And I had stepped away from the school just because, out of respect, I'm not going to vape on school grounds. So I had stepped away, walked down the sidewalk, went and had a vape. And when I came back, one of the dads that was there kind of, you know, came up to me and pulled me to the side. He's like, "Hey, you vape?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Doesn't that kill people?" And we ended up having a really great discussion about misinformation and quitting smoking, and vaping and e-cigarettes and safer nicotine products and all of this. We had probably a good 20, 30-minute conversation as we were kind of working along. And it turns out that his mom had passed away from a smoking related illness, and his sister is still a person, you know, she still smokes. And so after the end of this conversation, he was like, "You've really and I dropped Kassa's name in there a few times, and encouraged his sister to go check out Kassa and to check out testimonials and things like this, and peruse the site and things, which I would encourage everybody here to do as well. But at the end of that conversation, he was just like, wow, like you've really kind of opened my eyes and changed my mind about this. And I'm going to talk to my sister to see if I can help her, and I gave him some other information. I was like, hey, if she needs any help or whatever, please feel free to reach out, things like this. And that's all it takes is somebody, asking those questions. And maybe it's a little weird and awkward because of all the misinformation that's out there. When somebody says, hey, doesn't that kill people? Like, my gut instinct is to be like, no, you know what I mean? And like, but if you just like explain it to people and you kind of try to break it down for them a little better, usually those interactions are really good. And that was a really good one that I had. So just on that discussion, and be proud that you've quit smoking and be respectful too. But when you're out and about, if you're vaping and somebody asks you, have that conversation, take the time, one person at a time, each one teach one. If we do that, there we go.
And the thing is too, is that, it's a great story, by the way. You shouldn't be ashamed if you smoke. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want anybody to watch this and be like, oh, I'm proud that I quit smoking because I was ashamed of smoking, and people who smoke should be ashamed. And that's not the message we're giving here. And I hope that we're clear about that, because Kassa's never been anti-smoker, or you'll never see us try to say, throw smokers under the bus, or people who smoke under the bus. Sorry. We believe in choice, and yes, there's risks and everything involved, but there was a really great article. And if you go and look on my Twitter, which is Noel_Marsh, I posted, and I'm surprised it didn't get more traction than it did. I tweeted an article, and I forget who wrote it, about how it says, let people smoke. And
I read that article, and instantly within like the first paragraph, I was like, I don't know who this journalist is, but I love them.
I wanted to hug him. And I think I shared it back in the Kassa Skype, but yeah, and go read that, because he makes really good points. It's like, yeah, it's bad for us, but like the point I made earlier, we don't have a problem with people who can go jump off of mountainsides, or go skydiving, or even skiing. I mean, sometimes, if you ever watch YouTube videos, holy cow, if you see fails, I mean, if you see something, it's a wonder that we're still alive as a species, So, I mean, it's YouTube, I tell you. Yeah, so it does. He kind of points out, it's like, that's their risk, and he kind of points out things about how, yeah, they cost us more on the early end, but then if they die younger, like they claim, then they're costing a lot less on the far end when people get old and they cost a whole, he just makes a lot of really good, this is not by any way saying, hey, go start smoking, it's okay. But it's sort of like, and he also makes a point about the affluency and the ruling class type
that's
thing.
what I was going to.
Yeah, and I love the ruling class point about, if you're rich and you take risks, and they're the risks that we take, hey, we go climb Mount Everest, so that's an okay risk. But you smoke, oh no. But you do drugs, oh no, that's a bad risk. And PAVE is a perfect example of that. And I wish he would have. Parents against vaping, if people
wealthy suburbanites deciding what risks and activities are acceptable and what risks and activities are unacceptable for the classes below them. And that's definitely
but even worse, it's more insidious than that. And I saw another article that pointed it out. They said, if these were people of color's kids getting these vapes and not these rich kids, would they be forming these organizations? Would PAVE even exist if this was vaping only?
I mean, if you look at drugs in general, we didn't really start seeing big advocacy groups and things like this pop up until drugs entered white suburbia.
Right.
Once drugs entered white suburban neighborhoods, that was when you started seeing advocacy groups get involved, and funding and money. And there is a tobacco story here as well, and I know I think Amelia Howard has done some work in this
area that we're talking about now.
Shout out to Amelia.
But you know, one of the stories that is probably not very well known, but I tend to bring it up every now and then, is about smokeless tobacco, and this happened in the early '80s. And what I don't know if it was specifically the campaign that prompted the anti-tobacco folks to get involved here, but the warning labels that you see on cans of smokeless tobacco, even on snus, I tore mine off. But those resulted out of what happened in the 80s with regard to smokeless tobacco. And the reason why they zeroed in on smokeless tobacco was more, 20, 30 something white guys on Wall Street in, Manhattan or wherever, more white dudes in the Northeast started using dip because it was very convenient for them. It wasn't smoking. And obviously, if you're in a high pressure situation like the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, having any kind of mental boost is probably very helpful.
Yeah, and so, walking away for 5 minutes to go smoke is
right.
That's not happening.
Once smokeless tobacco use migrated north, it wasn't just the hicks in the South with the straw coming out their mouth in bare feet, using smokeless tobacco. Once it made its way up to the central city and the central district where everything is bright and shiny, that's when they really came after smokeless tobacco. And that I think people should probably bring this up again and again. Smokeless tobacco was really the first opportunity that we had to have this conversation about switching to safer products. And we never got that opportunity because they came after it full force. They went after it was a skull campaign called, the tagline was "Take a pinch instead of a puff." And they went after that and claimed that it was modified. It was a modified risk claim, and that was sort of, I think, one of the early. It's probably not the first time that this came up, but that was kind of one of the early wins that they had in going after any notion of promoting tobacco harm reduction.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and then they came up with all these stories about oral cancers and stuff, and exaggerated the rates because they were using a completely different product that was, our members in our friends in India, our harm reduction friends in India can tell you about, that is really bad. And they did not find that same kind of reaction with westernized, and especially snus. Snus has never been found to raise. There's been like 1 or 2 studies that had a hint of something with pancreatic cancer, but that was turned around and people were like, nope, that's, that didn't really show anything. So really they've shown that snus has no additional health risks. So it's essentially what you can call safe. And that's why I laugh when I see those continuum of risk charts that put snus like past the gums and and vaping and stuff. It's like, no, snus should be like over here, over by the next thing next to nothing.
Sweden is a great example of that. I mean, they have, if you were to just look at Sweden's just overall tobacco use rates, they're relatively high. But if you look at Sweden's cancer rates, they're relatively low. And that's that difference is somewhere in like the 70s or 60s or something like this, people in Sweden kind of voluntarily just kind of started switching over to snus. And it was just kind of this really revolutionary, really cool consumer thing that just kind of happened there. And they've embraced it. And
I'd love to get Dr. Brad Rodu on the show someday, because he just is brilliant on this. But even more telling is that, if I believe correctly, and Alex probably knows better than I do, even though my husband does use snus, but that the women in Sweden did not embrace it as much as the men.
No, men specifically. Yeah.
Yeah, and they still have higher rates. But on the flip side, aren't the women also embracing it in Norway? I think it is, Alex.
Yeah, and there's some new data out. This was actually something I was looking at yesterday. It was a Bloomberg and Gates kind of funded study looking at smoking prevalence around the world in specific countries between 1990 and 2019. And someone had posted up a tweet about this, acknowledging Sweden's reduction in smoking prevalence. And I do believe, well, from what I was reading when I was writing the menthol comment, it is true that women are slower to adopt snus than men were. And there's a lot of, I think there's some obvious issues there for everybody. It doesn't really matter what your sex or gender is. It's you can see it when I'm using it. I get a little brown spot on my teeth. Never mind the cavity. I got that a long time ago. And then there's the sting. There's a gentleman out there, Bingt Vibird, who is working on a
sting-free, right?
Yeah, sting-free snus is his product, and it's basically a membrane that prevents the sort of the harsh sting that some snoozes give people. Or I enjoy it, and I actually find it.
I was just going to ask. I feel like it's kind of one of those things with like when I think of like throat hit. For people who vape higher milligram nicotine, I'm sure that sting for some people is actually something that you're kind of after. Like it's something that you want, you enjoy, you desire.
It's like eating hot wings. I mean, everybody can eat chicken, but man, if you want a little zing, if you want a little adventure, make it spicy. So that exists for people who like that. But generally, people's tastes are different depending on where you are in the world, what your background was, sex and gender. All of these things play a role. And so the challenge for the snus industry in the world is to try to come up with products that are going to be more palatable to women. I think the nicotine pouches are going to be very good for that. They don't discolor your teeth. There's not tobacco juice flowing out. Even what I experience with a regular tobacco snus, I brush my teeth and it all goes away. It's not, I'm not permanent. Well, my teeth are mostly, I'm sure, stained from coffee and my previous cigarette use, and the fact that I'm not very good at personal hygiene. So,
right.
sharing our stories.
It's
not that I don't do it. I'm just not very good at it. So,
I mean, I use both. I use snus and I use nicotine pouches. Just because I enjoy both products, and I use them while I'm working, when I'm at places where I can't vape. Talking about doing work at that school here in town that we do work for, I almost always have either a pouch in or a snus pouch, and it's great for me. They work really great. I know people that don't particularly like them. I know people that don't like putting something between their gums and lips. It was really foreign for me at first. I was never somebody that used dip or chew prior, but I knew about the products, knew that they were safer, and was like, hey, this is something that might be able to help tide me over when I'm, working for hours on end and I can't go take a quick vape break or something like that. And yeah, they work really great for me. So something to consider for people out there that might still be on the fence about using pouches or snus. For me, it's a situational thing. I much prefer vaping, just because I think there's some sensory things that I don't quite get out of snus and pouches. But for the few hours that I need to use one while I'm working, just to kind of satisfy that nicotine craving, yeah, they work perfectly.
And it's the thing is that the nicotine gum is essentially a gum form of snus or nicotine pouches, because you're not supposed to sit there and chew nom 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 like you're chewing bubble gum. You're supposed to just sort of chew it a couple times to activate it.
And you kind of wad it into your. Yeah,
it's the same thing. It's just a different way of delivering the nicotine.
I had the exact same thought. There was something. There was another statement that came out about nicotine pouches this past week, and it was the same thing as what you're saying. I had that same reaction of like, how do you demonize the nicotine pouches and then turn around and recommend nicotine gum to people? First of all, look, if you want to quit smoking and you don't want to mess around with vaping, you don't want to do hypnosis or Alan Carr or anything else, try nicotine pouches. It is virtually, without the chewing bit, it is virtually the same experience as nicotine gum. You can get I'm always disappointed in nicotine pouches because they're too low nicotine.
Yeah, most of them that you'll find come in like a 3 or a 6, and that's
right. Which is,
I think there's a few of them that might be a little higher, but that's kind of the standard.
What do you think they're targeted at? Who do you think they're
nicotine
targeting?
gum comes in 2 or 4, and I think that the nicotine pouches, Kristen, are targeted to pretty much what I was describing earlier. Folks who don't want to deal with the brown in their teeth, or
people who use chew or snooze.
Or I mean, really anybody. Like the clever tactic here is just like what we saw with vaping in the early days, and still true today. It's just not so much in the marketing, but you can use nicotine pouches, snus, where you can't smoke. Yeah. And I know that there's a lot of argument. I unfortunately clicked on a video on YouTube that was like how to quit vaping. So now just all this stuff is showing up on my feed.
Oh,
thanks YouTube algorithm. But I did watch it. I am curious about what people are saying, and especially what they're telling young people. And so there's one perspective here. When you look at that whole like recommending a smoke-free option for when you can't smoke, one way to look at it is, well, you're just prolonging or expanding someone's dependence on nicotine, right? At least they had that break, when they were taking the train into work. But now you're giving, no. Look, I used nicotine gum that way for a long time, for several years, where I would use nicotine gum where I couldn't smoke. So don't tell me that you can't do it that way or whatever. The other thing is, I would much rather, and this is based on my experience, the advice to people is to start using an alternative nicotine product. Start using the nicotine gum. You don't have to set a quit date and put all this pressure on yourself to perform and meet the deadline. Just pick a day to start using it. Start using a nicotine pouch where you can't smoke. Use a nicotine pouch when you get up in the morning instead of having that first cigarette. And I think eventually you'll find it more enjoyable. And that's the key. It's not about following some prescriptive, regimented, cessation thing. If that's what works for you, by all means do that. But I think the message really has to be for anyone who is using any kind of nicotine product and you want to move away from it, or you just want to try something different, whatever it is, I think nicotine pouches are a great option.
Yeah. Right. Well, I guess what I'm saying is that because nicotine pouches are so similar in a lot of ways to the gum and the lozenges,
even down to the ingredients.
What do they offer that the gums and lozenges don't have? Do they come in more flavors? Are they, because you said they're weaker? Yeah. So
yeah, they
what is that? Would that be? Why would somebody who's using gum or lozenges try the pouches instead?
Well, I got a great answer for the gum.
Okay.
Because I'm going through this now. I like to chew gum. I'm a person who chews gum. And I have chewed way too much gum. I think I don't know if we talked about this on one of the podcasts. We get these muscles back here that are with chewing, and I'm pretty sure I've overworked them like for the past 15 years. And part of that was chewing the nicotine gum. I read the instructions. I know what they say, chew, park, but that's not what's going on in my brain when I put a piece of gum in there. And so nicotine gum is tougher, it's harder to chew, and so now you're really overworking your gums. I got everything from like sore jaws, bloody gums, heartburn. Those are the side effects I went through with nicotine gum. And I mean, this is true for all nicotine products, but it seemed more common with nicotine gum. You have to wait like 10 to 15 minutes after you eat before you put one in, or you get the niccups. Hiccups.
That's funny that I've never heard it called nickups, but that's what I get when I've used higher milligram snus. Like I've gotten the snus that I use tends to be around like 20 to 24 milligram snus, but I've gotten like 48 milligram snus.
Yeah.
And, like you're a champ if you use 48 milligram snus, but
Dewey's
like instantly within 2 minutes of putting it in my lip, I was like, oop.
Yep, there you go.
Yeah. That's the only time I've ever experienced it. And I was like, okay, that's weird, and I took that one out. And then like a day later, I was like, I'm going to try another one of these. And like within 2 minutes, hiccups. And I was like, oh, it's just maybe for me, it's a personal thing where it's like maybe too much nicotine. My body is like, okay, bro, you need to slow it down a little bit. That's my body telling me something here. So yeah, kudos to anybody that handles like that 48 high milligram snus. But I've never heard it called nickups before, and that's fantastic. And I'm going to use that now. Thank you.
I didn't coin it, so
I'm still stealing it from you.
I used to actually take the nicotine gum and wrap it in a big piece of Bubblicious. That like soft stuff, because I just couldn't stand the taste. I couldn't.
when I used nicotine gum to try and quit,
it's so long since I tried that. Ugh.
I tried quitting years ago, 2009, 2010. I tried to quit smoking with gums, and I bought lozenges too. And for me, neither one of them worked. I just chewed the gum and I smoked. I would put in a piece of gum, I would chew it. I'd be sitting there like, okay, when am I ever going to be satisfied? And then I would just light up a Camel and I would sit and chew the gum while I smoked. And the same thing with lozenges. I did the same thing. And so neither one of those things worked for me. But I know a lot of people, those products do work for. I get whiskey ups. That's yeah, that'll happen.
Other people are saying hot peppers and hot wings.
Okay, yeah, so Scott definitely wants to know what causes hiccups for everyone watching.
I assume it's got to be one of those things. I mean, usually, as I remember, well, my remedy for hiccups is like raise your arms and breathe in deep 10 times, because I had learned a long time ago, hiccups were basically your body telling you that your brain isn't getting enough oxygen.
That's yawning.
Also yawning, but hiccups are part of it.
See, my understanding with hiccups is that you need to, like your diaphragm is all, I don't know a better term than all messed up.
Out of whack.
Your diaphragm is all messed up. So like there's, there's always like the age old, the metal spoon in the glass of water and like holding your nose while you drink and all these different things. And I've tried every one of them that I've ever heard for hiccups. And the only thing that gets rid of my hiccups is to literally just sit and like do continuous deep breathing. Yeah. And you're basically like resetting your diaphragm. That's like kind of what you're doing when you do that. And like when it's like yoga, focus on your breathing. Like, but that's what I have to do. If I get hiccups, I'm just like,
yeah.
And you just
it goes into the, as far as our bodies reacting, I'm sure the diaphragm thing is 100% scientifically accurate. I trust you, but I did want to add that
terrible life decision to make.
I did just want to add that layer of like, it's just one more example of how our bodies tell us when we're pushing it too far, especially with nicotine and other things.
Sure.
And it's like, you can't, with the chicken wings, right? Like if you're getting hiccups because you ate the super spicy chicken wings, it's your body saying, hey, slow down a little bit. Like,
we might need to work up to
the endorphins a little bit, and then we can get back to, scarfing down some wings. But
we've had that discussion a few times because they love to bring up the things about this high nicotine and they're going to get nicotine poisoning, and it's just, it's too much nicotine and they're dual using and they're getting too much nicotine. It's like they completely ignore the fact that nicotine works kind of like food does. Because when you eat food and you get full, you stop eating food. When you use nicotine and your body doesn't need any more nicotine, you don't use it. If you're not getting enough, you use it more. I mean, they pretend it's like alcohol that you will just keep drinking and drinking and drinking until you poison yourself, which most people, I've never heard of anybody doing that with nicotine. I've heard of them doing it with other stuff. So it's.
Yeah, I will say, I think I probably came pretty close before I completely switched to just using snus. I would sort of be finished with a snus pouch, and then I have that. For me, vaping or smoking was always kind of about marking the beginning and end of certain things. So I'd take out the snus pouch, and then I'd take a rip off my vape. And I always kind of wondered, like, am I like doubling up on the amount of nicotine that I'm consuming here, and is that going to be bad for me? But it's one of the. It's not like I would, finish the snooze, take a rip off the vape, and be like, oh, I'm just going to keep doing this. It's what you described. I can feel that, like, I'm cool. I'm where I want to be, and so I'll stop.
Right.
That's how it works. It's not like alcohol where you get blackout drunk, and you just forget that you consumed an entire case of beer, which I've done plenty in my life.
I've never done that. No.
There's a word for all of this, and it's called titration. Human beings are fantastic at titrating nicotine. We have a lot of really early warning signs: headaches, dizziness, nausea. There's a lot of things that we will go through when we're starting to get too much nicotine in our system. Those are really early warning signs. People think, oh, you're nauseous right now, you're on the verge of nicotine poisoning. You're not. These are really early warning signs for nicotine poisoning. the idea that somebody could vape or use snus or smoke even to the point of nicotine poisoning is really absurd, because you would be lumped over the toilet, vomiting, head splitting headache. You'd be in all of these things going on, and you would still have to be consuming more nicotine through that entire process, which no one's going to do. Like, no one sits there with a splitting headache, vomiting, and just like, I'm just gonna keep vaping, just keep vaping. Like, nobody does that. You're like, okay, bro, I've had enough. Like that unless you're drunk
to your body. Because when you're drunk, you just do stupid shit.
So I mean, yeah. So this is the point where we have the adult conversation about how to use drugs, right? I mean, if you're going to go out and have a really good time this weekend and tie one on and be super drunk, like, don't also try to smoke an entire box of cigars. Don't mix. I mean, look, you can mix your drugs, but be thoughtful and careful about it. And certainly, there are drugs that it's the synthesis. There are drugs that drug with this drug, and you get an effect that you weren't really prepared for. That's stuff to be aware of. And if we can have that conversation in the open, people can have a much safer and enjoyable time.
Yeah. So when it comes to polysubstance use, I recommend people probably just don't. It's a really good idea to try and stick with whatever drug you're doing and stay with that. If you're going to mix, though, some heads up, please don't mix benzos and alcohol and opioids. They can lead to higher risk of respiratory suppression when they mix. So that's a really bad idea. If you're going to use any opioids or benzos or anything, not specifically benzos, but if you're going to use opioids and you're going to go out and party or whatever you're going to do this weekend, please either carry Narcan yourself, let somebody know that you have Narcan with you, or have somebody with you that has Narcan. Also, please don't use alone. It's just much better if you're using with people. There is safety in numbers. Another thing about mixing, for lack of better terms, uppers and downers, you can have a masking effect. So if, say, you're using opioids along with something like cocaine, a stimulant, methamphetamine, something like that, you may not realize how much you've taken because that effect is being masked by the other drugs. So you may try to take more. That's a really big risk because, again, that can lead to, with opioids and things, respiratory suppression. Even though you are taking stimulants, there's still a very real risk. Recently, there's now federal funding for, and it's legal now to get fentanyl test strips, which I would highly recommend anybody to go do. For a long time, they were considered drug paraphernalia and illegal. They no longer are. There are plenty of places and groups that you can reach out to get fentanyl test strips. They're super easy to use. It's like a little I don't know. It's almost like a little pregnancy test for your drugs. Like one line is positive for fentanyl, 2 lines, I believe, it's negative. You only need a small amount of whatever substance you're using, and you can do it right in the packet that the strip comes in. They're great. Please carry them if you're going to use those drugs. And again, safety in numbers. Don't use alone. Let somebody know that you're using, and just be safe out there. I don't ever recommend like even cannabis and alcohol. Cannabis can act as a vomit suppressant. So a lot of people will, they'll drink a bunch and they'll smoke and they'll drink and they're having a great time, and they don't realize that maybe they've had too much alcohol, and your body's natural way of getting that alcohol out is to vomit. And cannabis can act as a vomit suppressant. So you can end up, your body isn't able to get out that alcohol when it needs to, when your body's like, whoa, we're getting, we've got too much. We need to, open up the hatch and release here. Your brain is going to go, nah, bro, don't worry about it. Just smoke a little more weed. So yeah, polysubstance use, there's definitely a lot. There's definitely an additional risk added on. So please know what you're taking. Use with friends. Please carry Narcan. I carry Narcan wherever I go. I carry 2 Narcans with me everywhere that I go. Not particularly for me, but just in case somebody is in distress and could use a helping hand, I can be there for that. So that's my advice to everybody this weekend. If you're going to use drugs, please don't use alone. Be safe. Test your drugs. Carry Narcan, and party on.
Well, I don't do that really, but I learned something there in that whole speech. But I'm going to say take 2 points after that. The first one is, I think nicotine is the only thing that's an outlier on that, because I don't know if nicotine with any of the stuff you described has a bad reaction, does it?
With other substances, no, not that I'm aware of in any way.
Okay, there. And number two, to all of the vapors out there who are watching today and wondering why the heck are we talking about that kind of stuff? You know what? Everything that he just said, everything that Logan just said, harm reduction.
Yeah, it's just harm reduction. I mean, you know, it's one of those things where like people, oh, you're a vape advocate, you're this, that, or they'll talk to me about it. And I always just tell them, no, I'm a harm reductionist. That's first and foremost. That was a big point that I made when I joined CASA, that, when we have these discussions and doing things, that I would be very open about drug harm reduction and talking about drugs and things like that. Because for me, it's all harm reduction. It's all bodily autonomy, people's choices, and how can we make those choices safer? How can we educate people that there are safer ways to do these things, where we're not forcing people to quit or stigmatizing them or demeaning them or being coercive? And we can just say, look, I respect your autonomy. I respect what you do, but there are safer ways. There are ways to keep you and your friends and your family safer. And this is how we do that.
And that's what circles back to what we were talking about earlier about coming out as a vapor, not being ashamed of it. Yeah. They're trying to encourage people who use other substances to do the same thing. There's no reason. And again, it's a class thing. It's a class thing. If you smoke cigars or you drink high-end cognac, or if you, I don't know, what kind of, you have prescription drugs because you have a doctor on speed dial, that's okay, but you're meant to feel ashamed because your choice of just relaxing is smoking a joint or having a beer instead, or whatever. That stigma's got to go away. It's ridiculous. It's kind of like the whole it's that Puritanism in America of hiding those things. Don't talk about it. We don't talk about that stuff, and yet everybody's doing it. It's just like everybody's not everybody, but way more people than you think. And so there's a lot of people who, if it makes you happy, it makes you happy. If you're not hurting anybody else, there's just reason for you to feel ashamed of that.
Everybody has their own reasons why they use whatever substances they use. I just think it's a personal goal of mine to just help educate people, respect them, treat them with compassion, and try to encourage them to use safer or be safer, or at least educate them that there are safer ways, that there are safer products, and that they can mitigate or get rid of those additional risks that they're taking. Yeah,
and that's the thing too, is if you're still feeling embarrassed about it, if you're feeling stigmatized, when your casual use turns into something that you feel is scaring you and you're worried about, because that casual use is already looked down on, you're too embarrassed, you're too stigmatized to go ask for help, and you just keep spiraling down until something bad happens. And that's why that stigma has got to go away for any kind of drug use, any kind.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm off my soapbox.
I did just want to maybe conclude this section of the podcast by saying, replying to the comment that flashed on the screen, I'd just say, hey man, if System of a Down is what gets you in the mood, I've got no judgment against that. So
oh man, I just thought it was good. I thought it was a good one. Harm reduction. Don't mix System of a Down with dating. Man.
So we've had a good conversation here for sure, and we've got a little bit of time here if we wanted to cover anything else in the blog post from this week. E-cigarette summit happened. I don't know if we wanted to go into that. I got to attend for both days virtually. Did you have some time to view it, Kristen?
Oh God, I wish I had, but I've been following a lot of stuff on Twitter and stuff, because I just have not had time to be able to just sit through it. I was going to put it on in the background, but I know what would happen. I would just be like constantly going over there and not paying attention to what I should be doing and yelling at the screen sometimes. But I've heard it was pretty good.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah,
the good news is that everybody at CASA, we can all go back and check the videos. There, you can go back at your leisure and kind of rewatch things. And there were some good panel discussions as well. I neglected to take notes on everything, so I don't have any real specific points to bring up. But I do think it is really important to highlight the research from Abigail Friedman. She is a researcher from Yale. She's actually shown up in a few hearings this year to talk about her work and her opinion as an expert in what the results of harsh regulations such as flavor bans. And that was the bit of research that came out this week. And the timing was great. It came out just in time for E-Cigarette Summit. And she did a presentation. I would recommend anybody going back and watching her presentation and the panel that she's a part of. But her work was looking at the outcomes from the flavor ban in San Francisco. And the result, of course, was that smoking rates among young adults and teenagers went up. I don't have the numbers in my brain, but that's not a great result. And I think we do have the chart here on our blog post, and I'm making sure we don't have dead air, and I'm scrolling to it. Here, I'll share my screen.
Yeah, it's on the blog post. Share your screen. Yeah. Plus, there's if you go to the blog post, we also have a great article about that kind of did a coverage of it. Who did that? That was Mark. Was that Mark Gunther? Right there. I think you just scrolled
Mark
past.
Gunther.
Yeah. Oh, that poster.
Article.
Isn't that New Jersey or something like?
Yeah.
It is in New Jersey.
Terrible.
He kind of used it as an example, but the article itself is talking about kind of what the general mood was in the E-Cigarette Summit and what they're talking about, a little bit quick summary and stuff. So if you're not familiar with it, that's a good place to start. And then he's got some good links in there that you can click to go on from there. But yeah, and then we do have, if you go back to the blog, I do have the link to it's the San Francisco one, right?
Yeah.
The San Francisco kids. Yeah. And it was talking about essentially it was like two other kids in other cities where they hadn't banned flavors, their smoking rates continued to decline. And I think it was high school seniors. It might have been more grades. There it is. And they went down to like 2-point-something%, but the San Francisco kids were up to like 6-something.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly. I don't know what the numbers indicate.
Looking, so yeah. Specifically within the district of San Francisco, and then looking at outlying districts around them.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else. There's no other like factors to create this. Like, this isn't pandemic related. This is a direct result of the flavor ban.
Yeah, yeah.
With limitations. I mean, admittedly, there are some limitations. Stanton Glantz tried to pee all over it, and I think it was Cliff again who wrote about him doing that too, I think. But yeah, he's coming back and saying, "Oh no, this is wrong with it, that's wrong with it." And it's a good person.
Really, retracted study guy wants to talk about what's wrong with the study?
Well, and not just the retracted study guy, but the straight out of the big tobacco playbook. Remember, I mean, this is the problem that tobacco control has right now is that you become what you hate. And they have themselves, I mean, this is not like, I'm not coming up with some conspiracy theory here. This is part of their strategy to fighting back against tobacco companies, is co-opting their strategies. So of course, Stan Glantz is going to take that page from the big tobacco playbook and use it every time he can. So yeah, they're all about this. I mean, we're starting to see the effort to demonize the nicotine pouches, and this will continue. You and I having this conversation about what's the difference between a nicotine pouch and nicotine gum. Exactly. There's not much other than right. You can skip the sore jaws. So they are now going down that path of further demonizing nicotine and making it sound like the scariest magical substance on the planet.
Sure. I mean, just prior to kind of e-cigarettes becoming a thing, organizations like Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids were gearing up to go after nicotine gums and things like that. And then e-cigarettes really hit the market. They were like, oh, that's a better target than, campaigning against gum. But yeah, it's always been,
and Glance's op-ed or whatever it is, his blog post that he wrote about it, I think Mark actually shared that too and said, oh, he makes a good point that if flavors were actually affecting cigarette sales, then tobacco, why the tobacco companies wouldn't oppose the flavor bans. And he's
they have the fallback. They have products to fall back on.
Right. But my point was, well, first of all, how did the tobacco companies know ahead of time before the study that they were affecting cigarettes? That they didn't know to fight them because there was no study out. And I said, but of course, by Glance's logic, he had people, vapors having heart attacks before they ever vaped. So that would make sense, because you can't have there's just no way. There's no, that's, if you scroll down, you could see my response to him is on there probably. And that it might be, I don't know.
Well, I'll just stop it to Clive Bates's response for a second.
I can't read it.
Clive Bates was just pushing back on Gunther's calling it a good point by saying, not a good point, really. Tobacco and all other companies have broader objectives: profitability, growth, competitiveness, regulatory litigation risk, credible strategy, reflected in shareholder value. They are trying to maximize this rather than cigarette volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had said something to the point of, I said, how would tobacco companies know flavor bans increase cigarette sales before a study was done? I said, well, considering Glance did a study that found vaping caused heart attacks even before the subject started vaping, I guess that would be a logical leap for him. And then I said, where was that other one? Because I had two tweets that I put in there. Because I said,
yeah, it's up on the screen.
Of course, by his logic, we could also assume that the fact that tobacco companies don't support flavor bans, which would increase their cigarette sales, shows they're sincere in saying they want to move away from combustible cigarettes, right? And look who said exactly to my tweet. I don't know if you can pull it up or not.
Yeah, the senior marketing manager for managers market support and capability building at Philip Morris International.
Philip Morris. But yeah, I mean, and to be that it actually does make sense that it's going by tobacco smoking is going the way of the Pony Express and coal furnaces. If they don't adapt, real estate, travel agencies, anything that was doing a thing before technology and a better technology came along, they either adapted or died. And that's what tobacco companies, if they're smart, they will adapt. Certain companies adapted to the technology. Real estate's been doing okay. Travel's actually, you've got new travel agency type stuff. We've got computers and tweeting and all that kind of stuff instead of the Pony Express. But there's other companies that actually adapted. And I think that's what the tobacco companies are honestly trying to do, that they see the writing on the wall.
They have to, because more and more consumers are waking up to the idea of cleaner, safer nicotine, more convenient, and more satisfying. And it's some of this is, of course, the result of all of the coercive tobacco control policies that we've seen over the decades. I'm not naive, and I'm not a total one-sided kind of person where I'm just like, our team is the best team. The reality is that tobacco control policies have reduced smoking prevalence, but what we're talking about now is continuing to reduce smoking prevalence. And even if we can talk about this in the way that I prefer to talk about it, is consumers will choose to stop smoking once we experience products that we enjoy more, which is absolutely key to this. So yeah, I just absolutely lost my train of thought there. But
well, yeah, essentially it's as if they were fighting climate change. If all of a sudden the big, bad, ugly oil companies and car companies were all like, you know what, you're right. We're gonna change this. We want people to be safer. We want our world to be cleaner. So we're gonna, change things up and adapt. And they went, oh no, you can't. You're too sneaky. You can't put out a better, more efficient car. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, it's like it would be. It would be, and I'm sure there is an environmental argument against the Ford F-150 Lightning, which is the only pickup truck I think I've ever been excited about. But yeah, it's the same. That's a perfect analogy. It's as if they went after the automakers for making electric vehicles and saying, nope, you're responsible for global warming and all of this environmental problems because of petroleum and this and that. And think of the exact same kind of scenario.
Yeah.
Right? We know that auto manufacturers, they bought the patents to things like the water-powered car or electric-powered cars and so on, and just kind of shelved it.
Buried them.
And we've had to live with things like forced obsolescence and we don't get the same kind of mileage that we should have. There are very fuel efficient engines out there, but you can't release that except for kind of on a slow drip, or it tanks the oil industry, or it does something to the all the other suppliers down the line that are doing replacement parts and so on and so forth. And so the American public, the people around the world who are dependent upon the automobile, have been misled for at least a century about how more efficient these vehicles could be, right down to not using gasoline. And I don't have a problem, certainly. We don't have a problem with auto manufacturers now profiting off of the EV revolution. I'm super excited for the F-150. I'm not shilling for Ford or anything like that. I do own a few shares on my Robinhood account, but I'm totally excited about the fact that if your power goes out, the truck will keep the power in your house running.
Wow,
that to me is amazing, cool. And a huge selling. I mean, if you've got $40,000 to $90,000 to part with, yeah, that's what you can do in 2022. But anyway, all of that.
Also consider donating to CASA.
Yeah, if you've got $40,000 to part with, break up CASA. We'd love to put it to work. But
we'll buy Alex the truck.
No, I will not do anything. I don't know. It's an F-150 like crew cab. I don't think I can park that here. So anyway.
And the other two studies that came out that we talked about, one was out of the UK, which that's going to be good because, hey, it's the UK and you guys rock when it comes to this stuff. But they basically, it was kind of sort of a no-brainer, but they were just looking and saying, that people who smoke, who get truthful, accurate information about nicotine vaping products have the most to gain from accurate e-cigarette perceptions. So basically more proof that the U.S. public health groups need to quit lying about this stuff because they are harming people who smoke. And then there was another one that kind of sneaked in under the radar. And you can see all these on our blog post, especially podcast listeners, if you can't see the screen. And I can't see my screen right now because I don't know if Alex is sharing any of this or not. Oh, he is. Thank you, Alex. Because I'm looking over at the actual blog. And then the other one was... came out of Quebec, and that one kind of was a little sneaky because if you read the headlines, it was sort of like, oh, guess which generation vapes the most, and it's the younger people. But what they didn't really talk about, they kind of just went, don't talk about that, was that of those under 65 years old, the teens and the young adults vape the most and smoke the least. So the people who smoke the most vape the least. Well, hello, duh. But again, that more compelling evidence of these younger people, they're not going on to smoke. They're vaping, and that's what they're choosing, and it's displacing the smoking. And that's something that the anti-vaping people just don't want to talk about. They keep ignoring that. Just that, oh yeah, there's and then calling it tobacco use. That popped into my head the other day. Is that when we talked, not the other day, but earlier, when we were talking about Sweden and how they say they've got a high rate of tobacco use, but most of it's snus. And that's what they try to do here in the US. Oh, we've got this high rate of tobacco use. Well, yeah, 99% of it's vaping for kids, but we're not going to talk about that.
I think the difference there, though, is snus is physical tobacco.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that Yeah, and that is a big difference. We're tobacco derived, but so is
it's much less misleading when Sweden talks about their tobacco use in reference to snus, because it is tobacco, as opposed to the U.S. talking about tobacco use when they're referencing vapor products.
Yeah, right. This is the thing, and I think maybe that article that you shared that we had up on the screen just a second ago, some of this. And everything that we're trying to push back on with World No Tobacco Day and just everything going forward really is, tobacco control made a decision. They made a decision back in the 80s or the 60s or whenever they got fired up, was that they decided to treat all tobacco products as if they were cigarettes. And it has always been the campaign. I know I'm repeating this. We have all had this conversation, but I just want to make sure anybody else who's not aware of this and why we are I think so. This is another language issue, right? Like if you're going to talk about cigarettes, talk about cigarettes. If you want to talk about the continuum of risk, let's talk about combustion versus non-combustible. It's all about the smoke. And that's where this needs to be. This cannot be this absolute, it's all or nothing kind of campaign. And the consequences for making it all about tobacco is, and pretending that all tobacco is just as harmful as a cigarette, is now we're dealing with having to unwind misperceptions about nicotine. Even the stuff that gets an FDA stamp of approval, doctors are scared of it because of this unrelenting campaign to confuse people about risk among various tobacco products.
Yeah, smoking is tobacco, tobacco is nicotine, therefore nicotine is smoking.
Right.
It's like, it doesn't work that way.
and somewhere in that whole loop, you're just really, you are an agentless addict.
Yeah, and when you have
a nicotine zombie and you are not capable of making decisions on your own.
When you have doctors that have these misperceptions and their patients or people coming to them asking for advice on how to quit smoking, things like this, and if doctors are so afraid of recommending any nicotine alternative product, any smokeless nicotine alternative product, whether it's pharma or whatever, you're greatly reducing that person's chances of succeeding in quitting smoking. But like it to me, it instantly kind of reminds me of opioids and Oxycontin for pain patients, and where doctors, were getting to the point where they were literally terrified to write these prescriptions for people based on so many misperceptions about it. And then that led, pain patients who now were no longer getting their prescriptions, no longer getting their medications, and then still in pain, turning to much more harmful alternatives to try and ease that. So those are the results. I mean, a big part of the overdose crisis that we're in right now is doctors' misperceptions and fear to help people and give people a safe supply or talk about safer alternatives or things like that. And that's a real risk. Now, what that could lead to in terms of smoking and nicotine, I don't have an answer for, but that's what comes to mind when we talk about those doctors' misperceptions and their fears based on that. And in the case of opioids, it's deadly, like very deadly. I mean, in the case of tobacco, if people aren't, or smoking specifically, if people aren't, being educated or talk to their doctors, aren't providing them quality information, accurate information, there's a good chance those people are just going to continue to smoke. And then therefore we're in a similar boat where those doctors' misperceptions are leading to people dying.
Yeah. And again, if you want to keep smoking, and nobody's telling you have to quit smoking. We're just talking about people who want to quit smoking and have them having options. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
There is a question that popped up. It said, why isn't there a recent study in how addicting nicotine really is? I can answer that.
I mean, there's been a number of them.
Yeah. The big thing is that there's been so many that it's pretty much agreed upon. And you can go and look on the FDA website and look at what they say about nicotine gums and lozenges and such, and say they don't have an addictive potential. Yeah. So they're not very addictive. Nicotine alone is not very addictive. It doesn't have but there's really no way, because addiction, there's dependency and there's addiction, and they're very intertwined with each other. And then there's just use, which is also intertwined with that, because you could just use and not be dependent, and then you can be dependent and not be addicted. So there's not really, if you go and look it up, there's just so many different ways that you can see it defined. Even the experts on addiction agree on what addiction is. And so, but generally I wish, is Father Jack still here? He'd be a great person for this too. And you too, Logan. But as far as it goes to nicotine, it's just, there's just no way, because, and I think I tweeted about that the other day. It's like, how come I'm dependent on my coffee, but I'm addicted to my nicotine? And I use both, so what's the difference? Well, they tend to say, well, if the dependency, basically if it ruins your life, if it's bad for you, if it's bad for your health, if it's bad for people around you and your family, that's kind of the line between dependency and addiction. But not even then. I'm being broad here. I just want to be clear on that. But that's kind of the thing, is that they try to say, well, if it's bad for you, because if you're Father Jack is here. He's okay. We'll have to put this on here somewhere, but so it's, you have to ask, are we really even addicted to the nicotine, or is it just a dependency? And our kids who are using it even a few times a week, are they even dependent? And they're being described as addicts. So that's where it gets,
I think the easiest way to kind of define the difference is that addiction is really dependency plus known harms. So like if you're dependent on your medications that you take in order to live a functional and healthier life, whatever that may be, or your caffeine or whatever it may be, if you're dependent on that for whatever reasons, mental, physical well-being, things like this, that's one thing. That's dependence. Nicotine helps me focus. I use it every day. It helps me stay alert at my job and what I'm doing. But yes, I'm somebody who is, I would say I'm dependent on nicotine for those reasons. It improves my cognitive abilities, and that's one of the reasons that I use it. Whereas when you move into addiction, you're talking about that dependency plus harms. You're talking about whether it's great financial harms, family harms, self-harms, things like that. So that's where you kind of, when you knowingly know, like that you're causing harms, that this use or whatever it is causing harms, and you continue that problematic use regardless of those harms. Now we're starting to move into the realm of addiction.
He says, I put his statement up there, addiction has negative consequences, whereas dependency just means they're withdrawal symptoms. Yeah. And that's the thing about dependency too. I'm dependent on breathing. I'm dependent on food.
Yeah, we're talking like substances.
I can't quit either one of those, but I still could quit nicotine. I have 3 times when I had 3 kids. He also has a question. I'm going to put that up there real quick. Do we clearly state somewhere that vaping is an evidence-based tool for adult smoking cessation? I'm pretty sure we do somewhere on our site, don't we?
I'm gonna navigate to this resource on our site because it is useful. And I don't know that we explicitly say it with those words, but all of these kind of questions or issues that someone might have, being curious about vaping or whether or not they can use it to quit smoking, we've tried to sort of address here in the FAQ section. And the first one I sort of landed on was, does harm reduction really work? And rather than coming out and saying, it's evidence-based and so on, we'll just point you to the evidence. Indeed, in Sweden, as we were talking about earlier, the Swedish experience is of course its own 30-year body of evidence, even longer, I'm sure. And so that I think is one sort of note there, that indeed tobacco harm reduction is evidence-based and does help people give up combustion.
Yeah,
and generally,
I don't know as though we can make like cessation claims though.
Yeah, we can.
Oh yeah, we can.
We can.
We can.
Okay. Whoa. Okay. Well,
that's why we exist.
That's part of the reason
we're here.
I just didn't know if we could specifically state cessation.
Yep. We can say we're consumers.
Look at that. I'm on the board and I don't even know these things.
Here's one for you.
I guess technically, we're not like we're not business.
We're not a business.
Or things like that, right?
That's why we're here. That's why we exist.
Here's your answer, Logan. Can I use smokeless tobacco to quit smoking? Yes. Yes, you can.
Yes. Yeah. My only question was like specifically with the word cessation.
Yep. Yeah. That's all that law is only to businesses. That's only people who manufacturers, sellers.
Right.
They cannot say the word cessation. And that's, like I said, that's why CASA was created back in 2009, because we were like, hey, we can say it. So we have to be the ones to get it out there, because they can't say it. So somebody's got to say it, and counter all the
like
that's coming
even
out.
prior to CASA, me as an individual, not a seller, retailer, manufacturer, distributor, anything like that, not in the industry in any way, I could be like, yes, absolutely, it's a cessation tool. Yeah. And
some shops would try to get around that by having customers in there doing just that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm just a customer. I don't work here. I actually, at one point, like, I used to hang out at my local vape shop a lot, and there were certain things like that vape shop owners couldn't really do or say or whatever, and I would just be in there and I'd be like, yeah, I don't work here. What do you need help with?
There you go. I remember we went through some periods where they couldn't help with the coils in some places, but they couldn't help you fix your mod. And I mean, it's just some of the laws are just ridiculous.
Yeah, they weren't able to change coil heads or show you specific things about that kind of stuff, because
you can't help them with it. Just give it to them and send them on their way. It's
like, you can't tell them anything. Yeah.
Imagine if they were trying to sell like cars and guns that way. It's just like, oh no. But
here's your gun. Have a great day. No safety lesson, no anything, no nothing. Just
And then to anybody who thinks, that all this stuff is new and that we're, oh my gosh, it's all Juul's fault because, we didn't have this problem before Juul. Baloney. The fact that CASA has been here since 2009 is proof of that. You guys, we were dealing with them lying about kids being hooked on flavors. They were going after Blue, I think it was. Was it Blue? Sure. Yeah, like Blue and small. I mean, they were going after anybody they could. And the whole, all the any picture they could find of that was gummy bears or cotton candy or whatever. They were already doing that. Juul just gave them a target. That's all it did, because they were succeeding. So they didn't cause all this. If Juul never existed, they would be going after Blue or Views, or they'd pick whoever was selling the most. That's what they're doing. And I'm not saying that Juul didn't do some dumb stuff. They were naive and buttheads, but I mean, they really were.
There's 2 books out about it now, if anybody wants to catch up.
And they came out on the same day.
And it really is. Juul just turned. I mean, they tried to do what we thought. But everybody who opened up a vape shop, and back in 2009 when we started all of this, and not when we started. I mean, there were vapors before us, but I'm saying when we started with CASA and everything, I completely just lost my thought. Where was I going with that?
Juul and
I'm a Juul. And oh my God, I'm getting
old.
You
and Alex today both.
Holy cow! I was going because we're talking.
This is what happens when you get towards a 2-hour live stream.
They were talking about. They were causing issues. I can't even remember. It probably will come back to me later. But I mean,
we'll talk about it next week for sure. It'll come back to you.
They're not the ones who they be going after whoever. They're not. They're just picking. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Juul. They tried to do what we did back then when we first got into this. We're like, oh my God, we've quit smoking. This is great, and my doctor's gonna love it, and the World Health Organization and the American Lung Association, they're gonna all think this is great, and they're gonna help people get it and all that kind of stuff, and just complete shock at how they went after it and tried to just squash it. And Juul went into it with that same not understanding. If they would have just talked to us, talked to experienced vapors, talked to people like Logan and Alex and Julie and me and Jim and all the people who Grim Green, everybody who's been doing this for a while, we could have told them, sending people to high school is probably not a good idea.
So before we get out over our skis here, hold on, just hold on a second. Before we get out over our skis here, that's still up for debate. And I do know that I do remember they tried to do outreach in schools, and the person that the Pave Moms claim was a Juul representative.
Not that one. I'm talking about the outreach. I'm talking about programs.
But you're right. If it was any other the top dog would have been the target for all of this.
It was.
And it doesn't matter. Personally, I am interested in reading Jamie Ducharme's book. I don't know that it's mentioned in there, but Julie and I spoke with her on background about our experiences in this space. So yeah, because I did have a little bit to do with that, and I do know that according to the reviews of the two of them, that is the one that gives it the fairest shake. But I'm sure that the story about Juul is very interesting to some people, but I'd kind of rather read about some of the other companies that you don't hear about in the mainstream media. You don't hear about Boosted, you don't hear about 5 Ponds, you don't hear about Naked, you don't hear about Demand Vape, you don't hear about Giant Vapes in the mainstream media. And these are people who built these companies, quit smoking by switching to vaping, and then they built the company from the ground up. And these aren't folks that came in with their design degree from Stanford University and all of their connections and all of their money. These are folks that literally built these businesses from the ground up. They're American success stories, and they're being destroyed by American Puritanism, which, if you need an antagonist for a good story, there you go. So journalists everywhere, go look at the independent vapor industry. Look at the people who have been doing this for years, and who would be otherwise successful if it wasn't for this horrible moral crusade that's putting people's lives in danger. I want to read that book. Write that next.
Preach it, Alex.
Yeah. and with that, I don't want to be the person with the last word here, but we are coming up on 2 hours.
Yes.
And I figured today would be a little longer with World Vape Day, and we've got people popping in from the Netherlands, and hi.
Yeah. Hey.
We've had Australia and the Netherlands, and I think I saw England. Somebody I knew was England. Where else are you guys from? I should start popping up where you're from, but I think that was it. Oh, there was that one science article about the regaining trust one.
Right.
You guys should read that one. Yeah, you guys should read that one too. That was harm reduction as a path to restoring. I
want to highlight this comment from Mike Berg, Alex Clark, aka The Muscle. I agree.
Harm reduction is path to restoring trust in tobacco control. And they were essentially saying, you guys got to basically quit lying, because people are just they're just ignoring you now. I mean, it's more, it goes in more into depth, but there's a link to that one also on the blog post. That's a great read. And I shared the tweet from Charles. He is the, basically the head of, he's technically the CEO.
I just get hung up on the words trust in tobacco control. That's right. Why I just get hung up right there.
That's the whole point. There's not any trust because of that. Yeah. And then
you can't trust the tobacco companies. You can't trust tobacco control. I mean, who do you trust?
I've almost trusted the tobacco companies more. I've almost got to that point. And then the other one that's up there, we talked about that Parents Against Vaping shared that poll that they paid for, and had a company that when I went to look at their site, because I was trying to find the poll questions, because poll questions can be led very easily. And I put, we put that example in there that there's a difference between saying, do you support banning vaping flavors, yes or no, to there's a youth epidemic and experts say flavors are a driving factor. Do you support banning flavors? That's a leading question. And some polls do that. And I could not find the actual poll questions to see how they were worded. But I did come across the company that did the polling, which seems to be a trusted polling thing. But on its About page, it actually says they use strategies that lead people to choose our client's product or service, to join their organization, hold their opinion, or vote as we would like. And they did a poll, and amazingly, that poll came in their client's favor of banning flavors, and it was only like 600 people too, I think. So it was really small, but it's just, and Carl.
Hold on a second. 600 people. And that's widespread support.
Yeah. Widespread support. I mean, it just.
That's like a Walmart on Saturday.
there's widespread support for Walmart.
Not my Walmart. I mean, there's not that many people that server support. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, that's a really interesting. The article's awful. They didn't point it out. It was basically just a press release. But I wanted to point that out to people of how this kind of stuff gets twisted. And Carl made a great point about that, because he was just like, this is what public health is doing now. I mean, he's like, what polling company actually brags about what kind of outcomes they're going to get people? And I'm like, yeah, that's a really good question. And that's who they had to resort to get this poll to work in their favor.
I would add, and just that layer of conspiracy theory, it's not just this one time. This is just.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I think that was at the last of the stuff on our Oregon.
I think we managed to cover it all.
We got the whole blog this week. I mean, it did only take us 2 hours, but I think we got the whole blog this week. What do you guys say to wrapping this show up, though?
Yeah.
Are you guys all right? Is everybody in chat? Thank you guys. So many of you have hung out with us this entire time. Awesome. And we thank you. I think, Alex, did you want to share this quote that you pulled up before we?
I am sharing it.
His menthol thing. Yes, we need to do that.
I can read it, but I think Kristen pulled out a great quote here for the blog, and that is, of course, non-coercive, non-judgmental strategies are available to FDA and health officials today that don't involve exposing people to different, more severe risks. It's time we stop pretending that the most extreme headline-grabbing interventions are the only ones available and put the focus back on what people need rather than where we want them to be.
Yes.
And that is, I think that sums up pretty well how we feel about the menthol ban and all of this other garbage.
Yeah, and that right there is harm reduction.
Mm-hmm.
Put the focus back on what people need. Meet them where they are at, as opposed to where we want them to be. There's this old, like, there's an old I don't know, kind of mantra or whatever that I had heard a few times that I don't necessarily agree with. And the other end of that, meet people where they're at, but don't leave them there. And I don't necessarily agree with that part of it, because that right there is that idea of where we want them to be. Like, don't leave them there. Bring them with you, get them to where you want them to be. No, just meet people where they're at. And I think that's a really great quote. And I think that speaks volumes to just harm reduction in general.
Yeah.
So yeah, excellent quote. But yeah, thank you to everybody. This is officially where we're going to wrap up this stream today. Thank you to everybody in chat who's just been excellent the whole way. Great comments, some really great questions this week. Thank you guys. To all the podcast listeners out there, if you would like to view, tune in, listen to the entire episode, the links will be available in the SoundCloud description to both the Facebook replay and the YouTube replay, along with a bunch of other information, links to this week's blog, links to CASA, where you can donate, where you can pick up some sweet merch. I wore my New York shirt today, just because I wanted to rep CASA. And I told Alex last week, I think, or the week before, I need to get some more shirts. So I'm going to be headed over to the shop myself here soon. But thank you again to everybody tuning in, and that's here, and to everybody watching the replay. Thank you for watching the replay. Alex, any closing thoughts for everyone this week?
Well, I wore my Princess Leia shirt because Star Wars doesn't get enough coverage. But I just wanted to acknowledge that Father Jack showed up and is part of this now for the comments, and thank you, Father Jack. It's been a while. Father Jack, for those who don't know Father Jack, he's been around. He's an old school vapor. He's been around for a long time. One of the first videos I watched making that distinction between addiction and dependency, I found very useful. And I assume that is still up on YouTube. So one great thing that's been around for years to share on World Vaping Day would be some of Father Jack's videos that he's put out. I'm not sure if it's still active, but Hasir, and we can, the name, of course, maybe needs a little updating, but the Helping Addicted Smokers in Recovery was something that Father Jack pioneered, and would take used gear or new gear or whatever and provide it for people in treatment facilities who wanted to get away from cigarettes, and providing vapor products. And of course, the final comment here about attending an ANTS webinar and then being ignored for bringing up feeling stigmatized and judged for being a vapor. Again, thank you, Father Jack, for all the work that you are doing and have done over the years. And I'm glad to see you around here. And for everybody else who came by, thank you for participating, and thank you for getting ready and participating in World Vape Day and pushing back on World No Tobacco Day on the 31st. I know it's a holiday weekend, but if you got 5 minutes to tweet something out, do it. It skipped my mind last year until I saw it trending on Twitter, and I was like, oh wait, that's happening. So maybe we can do it again this year. I hope we can. We've got all kinds of people from all over the world participating. Thank you, Kristen, for all of the work that you've done for World Vape Day, and of course for helping us put this together. And on those wonderful, happy, cheerful notes, everybody have a good weekend.
Awesome. Kristen, any final thoughts for everybody out there today?
Well, I guess, just once this live feed's done, rewind it, go back and look at the beginning and everything I said there. But yeah, we need you guys. Please get involved. Go to the World Vape Day Twitter account, the Facebook account, share the posts, retweet the tweets, use the tag though. Make sure you use hashtag WVD21. Go to our store and buy some CASA stuff. We're doing a little fundraiser during this week too, because we could use the funds for sure. We definitely don't have Bloomberg on our side. But yeah, please come try to have some fun, share some stuff, share your stories, come out as a vapor. Tell people what you do, because the more people who know a vapor, the more they're going to support vaping and understand what it's all about. So use this day if you have to. If you haven't come out yet, come out as a vapor today. Support tobacco harm reduction. Be nice to each other, and have some fun this weekend. Enjoy your day off. I'm not getting one, so I'm living vicariously through all of you.
Oh, I'm actually, for the first time ever, taking this Memorial Day off. Yeah, I normally work, but I get it paid this year.
Nice.
I get it paid, so I'm like, all right, I'm going to take it. Paid day off, I'll take, sure. But yeah, absolutely. Everybody out there, I hope that everybody has a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, everybody. Like we talked about, party safe, use safe, all those things that we discussed earlier this weekend and any other day out there. Much love to you guys. Thank you guys for all tuning in, and we'll catch you next week. Same time, same place. 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. Anywhere else around the world, you're on your own. You got to figure it out. I'm terrible at time zones, but that's it for us. Be excellent to each other, you guys, and we will see you next week.